Next up, we have Walrein. This tusked Pokemon has been around since Generation 3, and anyone who went into the Shoal Cave just north of Moss Deep City to catch the adorable Spheal will no doubt have strong attachment to raising it all the way into a Walrein. It was also, of course, incredibly menacing as Elite Four Glacia's most powerful Pokemon. Today, we'll examine how far Walrein's large fangs got in the competitive scene. And so, we ask, how good was Walrein actually? And in this video, we'll be going over these competitive formats. OU was beyond Walrein's tusks in its debut generation, as Cloyster was distinctly superior as a water-ice type thanks to spikes and explosion. However, in UU, Walrein was an absolute menace. Now at first it wasn't considered anything special. It was just seen as a generic bulky tank that could spread toxic pretty well, since its stab moves were great at warding off toxic immune Pokemon like Vileplume and Aggron. However, it came into its own once it was discovered that Walrein was actually a dangerous Pokemon in its own right. It wasn't a Pokemon most players thought of when they imagined fierce offensive threats, but it certainly was thanks to its solid special attack, terrific stab combination, and when given investment, surprisingly useful speed stat. This last quality also allowed it to make use of one of the best, most disruptive moves in the game, Encore. By locking the opponent into a debilitating move, thus not giving them a chance to heal against or cripple Walrein, our Tusky friend increased the amount of Pokemon it could threaten, making it even more difficult to deal with. The best example was against Grumpig and Wish Hypno, either of which would be the special wall for whichever team it was on. Sure, they could tank Walrein's attacks well, but with Encore in the picture, suddenly they would be unable to switch between moves as they needed to, thus losing their ability to deal with the Walrus one-on-one and forcing their teammates to switch in, which let Walrein maul them with its powerful attacks. Encore was also useful for punishing setup attempts, like Grumpig's Calm Mind, and could even thwart Kangaskhan trying to set up a substitute so as to unleash Focus Punch. And as far as Walrein's non-Encore moves, opposing waters did wall its stabs, but Walrein wailed on them with Hidden Power Grass, whacking them back whence they came. It was a great all-around Pokemon. Its natural bulk let it take hits from the metagame's common Pokemon without requiring investment, which allowed it to focus on making itself as threatening as possible. Among general hit-taking ability against the likes of Scyther and Nidoking, its ability to effortlessly check Rain Dance Amistar while posing a serious offensive threat in return was almost entirely unique. Only a similarly excellent Pokemon, Tentacruel, could boast the same. Walrein could and did still run a defensive set on bulkier teams, but the offensive variant was what propelled it to new heights in the metagame, as it fit on so many more teams than its defensive counterpart. It brought offensive teams defensive security while helping them pile damage onto the opponent. It scared so many of the best Pokemon. Gligar, Lunatone, Solrock, Cradily, Fearow, Nidoking, Scyther, Aggron, and Altaria, among others, all had to run from it, while most of the few Pokemon that could actually hurt Walrein, such as Hitmonlee and Electabuzz, did not want to switch into its powerful attacks. Overall, Walrein was a surprising, excellent Pokemon in advanced UU. It was initially thought of as just another wall, but it showed everyone that it could just as well break walls. The fourth generation was a mixed bag for Walrein. On one hand, it despised the increased power level with strong new moves Life Orb and Choice Specs, as well as the crippling Stealth Rock. On the other hand, it received an absolutely incredible ability in Ice Body, which was essentially free leftovers under Hail, which was now a permanent weather condition thanks to the new Abomasnow and its snow warning. Walrein became the face of Hailstall, with the name Stallrein being one of the most feared in all of Pokemon. Despite stacking the rough weaknesses to fighting moves and Tyranitar that a team with Abomasnow already had, its substitute Protect set was so obscenely deadly that it could make all the required team building struggles worth it. First off, its massive HP stat meant it could create 101 HP substitutes, preventing them from being broken by Seismic Toss. Furthermore, Leftovers and Ice Body meant that it recovered all the HP lost from substitute in 2 turns. So in other words, if it used substitute and then protect, it would be like it had not lost any health at all. This meant that the only thing preventing it from substituting and protecting indefinitely was the 2 moves combined 32 PP. That was enough to stall 2 Pokemon from full HP to 0 with nothing but hail damage, and unlike Sand, hail hit nearly everything in OU, since ice types were generally rare. Of course, many Pokemon held leftovers which offset hail damage, but they would be getting pelted with other forms of residual damage in Stealth Rock and Spikes, which Walrein could pile on with Roar. It could also hit hard on its own Stab Blizzard, which never missed in hail, or Brine, which doubled tripled in power against opponents whose health was 50% or lower. We haven't even mentioned toxic spikes yet, which made Walrein absolutely hellish, or hailish if you prefer. There was truly nothing worse than haplessly flailing against Walrein, alternating between substitute and protect, as her Pokemon quickly succumbed to hail and poison damage. Walrein was a rare sight in OU, as dedicated hail teams were inconsistent in a metagame filled with Tyranitar, but anyone who was unfortunate enough to run into one knew how devastating it could be. Now, Walrein being a rare sight in OU meant it dropped to UU, and there it was absolutely ridiculous to deal with. Sure, there was Magic Guard Clefable to get in its way, but Clefable could be dealt with, and it was a small price to pay for no Tyranitar constantly interfering. Eventually, Abomasnow was banned to borderline, but that didn't stop Walrein. It was such a terror that players had no qualms with using Abomasnow's pre-evolution, Snover, simply to set up hail. It didn't even matter if Snover died almost instantly, which it often did, because remember, it's not a fully evolved Pokemon, and thus has terrible stats. However, it activated Walrein, and that was all it needed to do. Offensive players were often content with starting battles 5-6 simply for a Stealth Rock advantage. This was like starting a battle 5-6 with the assurance that Walrein could very easily win the entire game later on. It became even more devastating with the release of Heart Gold and Soul Silver, as Walrein received Super Fang to halve the opponent's HP, speeding up their death and allowing it to stall even more Pokemon with the PP it saved on Substitute and Protect. Even after the generation ended, many players lobbied for Hail to be banned, all because of the sheer power of Walrein. To put it in perspective, nobody was afraid of the other Pokemon with the Ice Body ability, Glalie. Nothing came of it, but that didn't stop Hail from being labeled as quote-unquote cheap due to how oppressive it was and how easily it was set up. Funnily enough, despite Walrein being considered potentially overpowered for the tier, it didn't get used that much in UU, which is another in a long series of the Pokemon tiering rung's quirky whims. It probably had something to do with sticking the NFE Snover on a team in order to use it. Anyway, as a result of it not being used that much, Walrein dropped to NU. There was no permanent hail there, and as a result, Walrein wasn't that good. Had it not been for Stealth Rock, it likely would have been a solid defensive Pokemon, but as it were, its hit-taking abilities was impeded too strongly by the Sneaky Pebbles. Instead, it wound up being outclassed by Regice and Water types. It was unfortunate that it couldn't muster a niche in NU, but if the trade-off was being devastating in UU and occasionally even in OU, that was worth it. So all in all, the 4th generation was a good one for Walrein. The Weather generation left Hail in the dust. As if dealing with Tyranitar and Hippowdon, sometimes both on the same team, hadn't been difficult enough, now Politoed and Ninetales joined the fray. And on the rare occasions Hail did get used, Walrein was outshined by Kyurem, who was a massive offensive threat that wasn't entirely reliant on Hail being up, thus making it slightly more justifiable to double up on rock and fighting weaknesses in a metagame filled with Tyranitar and Terrakion. So to UU it went once again. The first stages of that metagame were dominated by Sun and Hail, except Hail was also using the ridiculously broken Kyurem. Sun and Kyurem were both quickly banned, but then Sand took over the tier. However, Sand was eventually banned as well, and with no weather opposition, Hail started to dominate. This was impressive given how the tier was famed for fire and fighting types, and was largely in part thanks to Walrein doing Walrein things. Walrein wasn't just excellent in UU though, it was excellent in RU as well. Hail was so powerful that it was very nearly banned, as besides Walrein, there was also Blizzard spam from Glaceon and Rotom Frost, and Trick Room Endeavor Solosis and Dualshin. Fun fact, with its quadruple resistance alongside Thick Fat, Walrein was the best ice resist in the entire game. Anyway, despite not banning Hail, RU lost it anyway, as Snow Warning was banned from UU, and Walrein fell into limbo, unable to find use in UU, RU, or even NU. Time passed, Black and White 2 came around, and with the more expanded metagame, UU decided to unban Hail. And while it would take some time for the style to once again find its footing in that tier, Walrein led the wave of Hail that swept over RU once again, dominating the metagame and quickly stirring up discussions on whether it should be banned this time around. Escavalier, who resisted ice and didn't take hail damage thanks to its ability Overcoat, shot up in usage in response, and was often cited as an argument to why Hail shouldn't be banned, as was Cryogonal and the dangerous Choice Scarf and Boar. Hail just barely avoided being banned, and almost as if in response, Walrein kicked it up a notch. Turns out it didn't just have to be a stalling machine. Choice Scarf Walrein was excellent. It had major surprise factor. There was nothing like blizzarding a Sceptile that thought it was advantage in the one-on-one. However, even beyond the surprise, it was a great set. It could check all sorts of dangerous opposing Pokemon with its fast Encore and cleaned up offensive teams hard with its powerful stabs, Blizzard and Brine. Of course, Stalrain was still devastating like little else, but the fact that one couldn't safely assume it was that set anymore made it even more difficult to play against. This wasn't what pushed Hail over the edge though. Nidoqueen moved up to UU via usage, and this made Toxic Spikes much more powerful in RU. An influx of Hail teams with Toxic Spikes and Substitute Protect Ice Body Pokemon, not just Walrein, but Glaceon, who had gained the ability in the Dream World, and even Glalie, washed over and began dominating the tier. Had it not been for Walrein, Hail might have stood a shot at staying, but at this point it was just too much for the metagame to bear, and Snow Warning was banned from RU. Walrein wasn't done though, as it followed Nidoqueen back up to UU and began wreaking havoc. It was made even better by the fact that it was reunited with Abomasnow, not needing to rely on the basically useless outside of Hail Snover anymore. While Nidoqueen being around meant that Toxic Spikes weren't too useful, this was a fine trade-off that Walrein didn't mind. Once again, Stalrain reigned, but inspired by the set's usage in RU, Choice Scarf also popped up and excelled. Hail had other excellent benefits, as it enabled Nidoqueen to run Blizzard over Ice Beam, and gave Raikou the ability to run both Ice and Grass coverage with Weather Ball and HP Grass, but they paled in comparison to the mighty Walrein. Eventually, the player base had enough, so at the very end of the generation, even with incredibly strong fire and fighting type moves running around everywhere, Snow Warning was banned from UU once again, owing mostly to our Walrus friends' antics. In another amusing anomaly of the tiering rung reminiscent of the generation prior, Walrein's overall usage actually saw it drop to NU in spite of its Hail-related dominance in the 2 tiers above. NU of course did not have Hail, and as such, Walrein was not good there at all. It was again mostly outclassed by Regice. Matter of fact, it was so useless that it was among the first generation of untiered Pokemon. This was the same Pokemon that stalled RU and UU players until they tore their hair out from frustration and banned it. So tiering is a funny thing sometimes. Generation 6 was absolutely devastating for Walrein. Weather abilities no longer summoned permanent weather, and just like that, the reign of Stalrain was over. It was even mocked by the fact that Abomasnow received a Mega Evolution. As a result, Walrein went from unkillable behemoth and ravager of lower tiers to a Pokemon that couldn't buy any semblance of viability anywhere. UU, RU, NU, they all passed by in a blur as Walrein plummeted to PU. And even there, it stood no chance. As a bulky water type, it was hindered by its weakness to fighting moves and Stealth Rock, and to throw salt in the wound, Walrein didn't even learn Scald, making it outclassed by Politoed. Plus, it had to contend with the tier's superior defensive ice type, Avalugg, who could heal instantly with Recover and clear Stealth Rock off its side of the field with Rapid Spin. Plus, Regice existed, and while it had its own struggles, it was still entirely superior to Walrein both offensively and defensively. There really was no hope whatsoever for Walrein in Generation 6. Sure, Encore and Super Fang were unique good moves, but the fact remained that Walrein's typing just couldn't keep up with the metagame, and thus it dropped to untiered for a second time, although this was the first time it actually deserved it. Sadly, Sun and Moon brutally mirrored Walrein's plight from the previous generation. There was never anywhere for it to go besides PU. There, it was outclassed by Regice once again, and neither Pokemon enjoyed being chipped by Stealth Rock, but Regice boasted Titanic Special Bulk, a stronger stab Ice Beam, and a crucial coverage move in Thunderbolt to thwart water types, making it the better choice every single time. Even Assault Vest users Hitmonchan and Lantern would do a better job of switching into the tier's common special attacks and responding effectively, whether it was Hitmonchan's hazard clearing Rapid Spin or Lantern's momentum maintaining Volt Switch. Other bulky water types were just going to be better choices. Amistar had hazards and knockoff, Poliwrath resisted Stealth Rock, both had access to Scald, and there just wasn't anything for Walrein to do besides flail around uselessly and be outclassed, as it was sent to untiered for the 3rd time. Although again, we must stress that it only really deserved it twice. Now you may think that since we haven't mentioned Walrein's VGC performance until now, it's not a very good Mon in VGC, and you'd be right. But that doesn't mean it lacks in placements. Thanks to one super fan of the Walrus, Samuel Harzma. Nearly every major Walrein VGC performance is credit to Samuel, or someone he directly inspired. Samuel's infatuation with Walrein started all the way back in 2009, where Sam used it to make top 32 at Nationals despite not even knowing about Natures and Eevees, riding Walrein's stab blizzards to tear through the abundance of Garchomp and Zapdos duels that new players would use. But it wasn't until 2016 that Sam and Walrein really got down to business, and the Walrus's true potential was unleashed. Samuel decided to run an Assault Vest Walrein as a sort of ice-type alternative to Crobat with more bulk and the ability to 1v1 Rayquaza, reading the meta shifts towards specially based Groudon and taking advantage of Walrein's bulk with an Assault Vest to exploit the change. The similarities to Crobat came in Icy Wind and Super Fang. Icy Wind gave his team speed control, while Super Fang ensured Walrein could cut enemies down to size. Meanwhile, Ice Beam could one-hit KO a Rayquaza out of Delta Stream, and for the final finishing touch, Sheer Cold was capable of flipping a game on its head. You see, Walrein thrives best in restricted formats, where its odd assemblage of okay traits come together to be greater than the sum of its parts. Thick Fat combined with Assault Vest let Walrein turn into a literal Walrein against Primal Groudon and Kyogre, and Walrein's ice typing of course lets it handle Rayquaza with ease. But really its main goal was to click Icy Wind and let other hard hitters go to town. Samuel put together an impressive resume with its Walrein, placing 9th at the Anaheim Regionals and top 8 at Portland Regionals. While in Anaheim, Sam also inspired his friend Chalky Horstein to give Walrein a try, and on the same day that Sam was competing in Portland, Chalky was able to use his own Assault Vest Walrein to place top 8 at the Kissimmee, Florida Regionals, becoming the first ever Walrein top cut user just 90 minutes before Samuel would break into top 8 in Portland. In addition, Chalky's use of Kyogre meant Walrein was a threat on another level. Its water typing meant that opposing Groudon had to be scared of Chalky's Kyogre coming in to make Groudon vulnerable to Walrein. While Chalky didn't have a water type move on his Walrein as he forgot to switch from Sheer Cold to Brine before the event, the threat was still enough to make Groudon think twice. While Walrein didn't make an appearance at Worlds, Samuel further innovated on his Walrein team at the Fort Wayne Regionals. Realizing that players were now wise to the extra defensive padding he'd added on, Samuel dropped Assault Vest as well as Sheer Cold and Ice Beam, as most opponents would just double his Walrein turn 1 to blow through the Assault Vest. In their place, he added Citrus Berry, Protect, and Encore. With Protect, the Walrus could exploit those double targets to its advantage, while Citrus Berry was self-explanatory in giving it more longevity to stick around and be annoying with Icy Wind and Super Fang longer. Encore, however, was a true coup. It let Samuel lock opposing Xerneas into Geomancy, sticking them with an endless loop if they stayed in, as they would be stuck on a charge turn. Thus, Samuel tanked a bit of his versus Rayquaza matchup to improve his odds versus Xerneas, and it paid off as he was able to place top 8 at Fort Wayne with this version of the Walrus, along with his squad of Groudon, Mewtwo, Chandelure, Breloom, and Mega Mawile. While Samuel put Walrein to rest for 2017 and 2018, he brought it back for a victory lap when the restricted meta returned in 2019 at the Columbus Internationals, using a virtually identical team except with Tapu Lele over Chandelure and Necrozma Dawnwings over Mewtwo. While Samuel joked that not even he knew what the Walrus was for, the plan was simple. Click Icy Wind, then hit hard. With Tapu Lele replacing Chandelure, Walrein became even more key to this plan, as Samuel lost his other form of speed control. The only big changeup was that Samuel made sure to put enough speed on Walrein that he could encore minimum speed Incineroar into Fake Out as well, an important facet of his team. All said, he brought the Walrus another impressive finish with a 27th place in Columbus. These are just Samuel's highest profile accomplishments with Walrein. It's his signature Pokemon and he's often found winning premier challenges with it in his spare time. So if the meta suits it, expect to see him return with the Walrus. Special thanks to Samuel for his help on Walrein's history. You can find him on Twitter at Dr. Fidget. And that's it. So how good was Walrein actually? Well, it surprised UU in its debut generation, where it was initially thought of as a slow, bulky tank, but eventually turned into a dangerous, surprisingly fast offensive threat, becoming one of the metagame's best Pokemon as a result. Then Generation 4 came around, brought Permanent Hail, and gave Walrein the Ice Body ability, and the result was one of the most dangerous sets in Pokemon history. Stallrain, the substitute and protect spamming demon. It dominated UU in Gen 4 and 5, as well as RU in Gen 5, and even though in 2 of those 3 tiers it was forced to partner with Snover, not even Abomasnow, it just goes to show how absolutely dangerous a Pokemon it was, that running a useless, not fully evolved Pokemon alongside it was worth it just to make it work. It was considered ban-worthy in Gen 4 UU, and was the main catalyst behind Hail getting banned from RU and UU in the following generation. It was always being discussed as potentially ban-worthy in RU before the hammer finally swung down, and was even banned from UU twice, once in Black and White 1, and the second time at the end of the generation generation in Black and White 2. Sadly, permanent hail was removed alongside all other perma weather in Generation 6, and with it went Walrein's viability, as it floundered uselessly even all the way down in PU. Nevertheless, despite the severe lows of the past 2 generations, Walrein in its prime had some of the highest highs any Pokemon's ever seen. There's no permanent hail in Gen 8, so who knows if there's any hope for it upon its return, but no matter what happens, nothing can take away from the fact that in 2 generations, Walrein used to be one of the most terrifying Pokemon around, even sometimes in Generation 4's Tyranitar-dominated OU. Thanks for watching, everyone, and as always, if you liked the video and you want to see more, be sure to subscribe to False Swipe Gaming for more weekly Pokemon content, and in the comments, I want to know, what do you think about competitive Walrein? How would you improve it now that hail isn't permanent anymore? Whatever it is, let me know in the comments. Also, thank you so much to our patrons for continued support of our videos, and thank you to everyone else watching as well. And follow my crew on these social media platforms. And that's all I got. See you next time, everyone.